From skinned knees to post-op stitches, scabs and scars, they're just not pretty. They are tender to the person who suffered the injury and rough to anyone else who touches them. They swell with the puffy pink of irritation and then harden like the dark red of brick. They protrude as signs that something, somewhere, went sideways. We know a bit about a sideways backstory. Jesus, the one whom we call Lord and God, was executed according to the gruesome practice of nailing one body to wood. And then he suffered post-mortem stab wounds. He was tortured and pierced. Exactly none of this was smooth or sightly. But today we are assured of a blessing from this wounded Lord because we have not seen, and yet we have come to believe, or we have desired and wanted to believe. And while there is some part of today's story that is about sight and seeing, I don't think it's the most salient part. See, I think that would be reserved for the MIA disciple who needed to touch the scabbing wounds in order to touch the resurrection. That would be our friend Thomas. In today's gospel, the disciples told him, "We have seen the Lord." But Thomas said to them, "Unless I see the mark of the nails in his hand and put my finger in the mark of the nails and my hand in his side, I will not believe." I think about the limits of first century CE medicine, of linen and aloe and spices, the limits of those things to effect healing. Or the paucity of running water in a pre-industrial desert climate. Thomas is wanting to put his finger in the rough, barely treated, mangled side of his friend. Thomas often gets a bad rap, with a name as titular as Jesus Christ whom he touched, Doubting Thomas. But that's 2,000 years of history and interpretation, not all of it good or helpful. I think he's kind of brave. He's clear, and he has good questions. The real key, I think, to understanding this passage and Thomas is in the last line of today's gospel. Now, Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written so that you may come to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that through believing, you may have life in his name. Neither the human author of the gospel text nor anyone gathered here today was on site for the events, but they are told for our benefit. They are told so that we may have life. And as much as it has to do with sight, they have also to do with touch. It boils down to this, that to be party to the resurrection, we have to encounter, that is, we have to see and touch wounds. And that's part of what Thomas confirms for us. Wounds are, in some ways, what make us recognizable to one another. Forensics turn to them as soft biometric traits, pieces of information that can reveal something of personal history. And this is operative in the gospel even before Thomas re-enters the scene. Recall that Jesus' first greeting of peace doesn't elicit any response from his followers. But then, after he spoke the greeting of peace, Jesus showed them his hands and his side, and then, only then did the disciples rejoice because they saw the Lord. They saw him because they saw his wounds. The wounds are not just for recognition, they make something new possible. What is true at the personal level is also true of peoples, of nations, and of the earth itself. Long after the smell of smoke dissipated, wildfires have still left what meteorologists term burn scars over swaths of Sonoma County, telling us something very true about our local ecosystem and the planet at large. But these scars are also how groups like EcoFlight gather, move, and educate diverse communities to become environmental stewards, beginning with a flyover survey of wildfire scars. And from that site of the scar, they help people seek renewal, fullness of life and health for the earth and its creatures. The identifying element of wounds is especially prominent in a small strip of land known as Israel and Palestine. The modern state of Israel, founded in response to the noxious rise of fascism and anti-Semitism in the aftermath of World War II and the Shoah. The modern state of Israel, whose founding partitioned a Palestinian homeland and displaced now millions and generations of refugees in what Palestinians term the Nakba, or catastrophe. This is identity born in wounds. I believe that there will be no word of peace taking flesh behind the locked doors of mutual enmity and fear until such time as each can enter into the other's wounds. But in that spirit, I am proud that Grace Cathedral, again for a third year, has joined with Combatants for Peace and other multinational and multi-faith partners to sponsor 2 joint memorials in Israel-Palestine, one on the Israeli National Memorial Day, Yom HaZikaron, and the other on the Palestinian National Day, Nakba Day. These powerful ceremonies provide an alternative to the official and more nationalist celebrations and offer a rare opportunity for the peoples of the land to share stories of how palpating their own wounds, addressing their own losses, brings them into deeper relationship with their neighbors who have also suffered wounds and losses. I hope that you will join us online for these events scheduled on May 3rd and 15th and bear witness to this most holy work. Coming much closer to home, it is precisely this wounded and healing body that we share in, both in the promises and the waters of baptism and in our weekly sustenance of the Eucharist right here at this holy table. This foretaste of glory is not smooth and stately, a statuesque idol without breath. It's rough and broken and wounded. Because we cannot meet a risen and resurrected Christ or the redemption of our bodies and the planet without also seeing that body as broken and the wounds ever in his pierced side. Thomas was brave. He had good questions. He was clear. And we can be too. Do not be afraid, Jesus says. Do not be afraid, Jesus says. For I will breathe on you and fill you. I will feed you and wash you. I will meet you and gather you, that with your own broken bodies, we too together may rise to new and whole life.